Imagine turning on the news for an update on healthcare and instead hearing a statement that could rattle NATO, strain US alliances and ignite a new global trade fight. And that's exactly what happened at the White House. During an event focused on rural healthcare, President Donald Trump unexpectedly said that he's considering imposing tariffs on nations that refuse to support US control of Greenland. He framed the move as a national security necessity, saying that the United States needs Greenland and suggested that trade penalties could be used against nations that don't cooperate. And this wasn't a throwaway line. It marked a major escalation in months of increasingly aggressive rhetoric from the president about Greenland, a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark and a member of the NATO alliance. Until now, Donald Trump had talked about buying Greenland or even hinted at the use of military force. But tariffs? That's something new, and it's why this movement matters. Greenland sits at the center of the Arctic, a region growing more valuable by the day. Melting ice is opening new shipping routes, and the island holds vast untapped reserves of critical minerals. And Donald Trump has repeatedly argued that China and Russia are eyeing Greenland and that US control is essential for national security. Notably, European leaders, however, say that those claims are exaggerated and that the real pressure is now coming from Washington. The response from Europe was swift and firm. France, Denmark and other NATO allies pushed back hard. French President Emmanuel Macron announced that French troops are now on the ground in Greenland, taking part in joint military exercises with Danish forces and other NATO nations, including Germany, Norway and Sweden. The message was unmistakable. Greenland is not for sale and its future will be decided by Greenland and Denmark alone. Earlier in the week, top officials from Denmark and Greenland traveled to Washington for talks with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Well, all those meetings ended without resolution, and Danish officials later said fundamental disagreements remained with Denmark's foreign minister, calling any US takeover of Greenland totally unacceptable. But while the White House escalated, Congress took a very different tone. A bipartisan group of US senators and representatives traveled to Copenhagen to reassure Danish and Greenlandic leaders that many in Congress do not support any effort to acquire Greenland. The delegation included lawmakers from both the parties, underscoring that this issue goes beyond partisan politics. Senator Lisa said Greenland should be treated as an ally, not an asset, and noted that roughly 75% of Americans oppose the idea of the US taking control of the island. Senator Chris Coons, who led the delegation, said that the goal of the visit was to listen, de-escalate tensions, and make clear that the rhetoric coming from the White House does not reflect the views of much of Congress or the American public. Meanwhile, people in Greenland are feeling the impact directly. Greenlandic lawmakers said residents are increasingly anxious as talk of the US control dominates headlines. Indigenous Inuit leaders warn that the language coming from Washington echoes a colonial mindset and ignores the voices of the people who actually live there. Greenland's Prime Minister has already drawn a clear line, saying that if forced to choose, Greenland stands with Denmark, NATO and the European Union. Well, not with the United States. So where does this leave us? Is this a pressure tactic meant to gain leverage in Arctic negotiations or the opening move in a much deeper geopolitical confrontation? Can tariffs really be used to force sovereign nations to surrender territory? And what happens to NATO unity if America starts threatening its own allies? Now it's your own turn. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. And should the US push harder on Greenland, or is this a dangerous overreach that risks long-term alliances? If you found this breakdown useful, make sure to like, subscribe to the Savera and stay tuned because this story is only just beginning.